Commander Vex Thara stood in the observation bay of the research station, her 4 eyes blinking in disbelief. Through the reinforced glass, she watched something that should have been impossible. The human scientist, Dr. Sarah Chen, sat cross-legged on the floor of the containment habitat, surrounded by 6 Kralax cubs. The cubs were pressed against her, their massive clawed paws resting gently on her lap and shoulders, their throated purring vibrating through the air like distant thunder. "This is not possible," Vexithara muttered, her scales rippling with confusion. Behind her, 3 other members of the xenobiology team stood equally stunned. Dr. Halvorn, a Zentarii researcher with decades of experience, adjusted his optical sensors. "Commander, in my 40 years studying predatory species, I have never witnessed anything like this. Kralax cubs are among the most aggressive juvenile creatures in known space. Their hunting instinct manifests at 3 weeks old. They have killed trained handlers." Vexithara's tail twitched nervously. "How long has the human been in there?" 2 hours, replied Lieutenant Cross, checking his data pad. "She entered alone, against protocol. We were about to initiate emergency extraction when the cubs began to calm." The commander watched as Sarah gently scratched behind the ear of the largest cub, a male nearly her size. The creature's eyes were half closed in contentment, its razor-sharp teeth hidden behind relaxed jaws. The scene looked peaceful, almost domestic, which made it all the more terrifying to the seasoned xenobiologists. "Pull her out," Vexthara ordered, "immediately, before they remember they are apex predators." Cross hesitated. "Commander, with respect, any sudden movement might trigger their attack response. If we activate the emergency systems, the noise and movement could—" "I am aware of the risks, Lieutenant, but leaving a human alone with 6 Kralax cubs is insanity." Vexithara pressed the communication panel. "Dr. Chen, this is Commander Vexthara. You need to exit the habitat now. Slowly." Through the speaker, they heard Sarah's calm voice. "Hi, Commander. I'm okay. We're just having some bonding time. Can I have another 20 minutes? I think Brutus here is about to fall asleep, and I don't want to disturb him." "Brutus?" Vexithara's translator struggled with the word. "You have named the specimens?" "Well, yeah. They have personalities. This big guy is Brutus. That's Luna because she has moon-shaped markings, the small one hiding behind Luna is Pepper, and the 3 wrestling over there are Mac, Cheese, and Steve." Dr. Halvorn leaned toward the microphone. "Dr. Chen, those creatures killed the last handler who attempted physical contact. We found only pieces of him. You must evacuate immediately." Sarah looked up at the observation window, and even from this distance, Vexithara could see her smile. "I know you're worried, but they're not going to hurt me. I asked them nicely to behave, and they agreed." Silence filled the observation bay. The research team exchanged glances that mixed confusion with concern for the human's mental state. "You asked them," Vexithara repeated slowly. "Nicely." "Yep, I just came in, sat down, and said, 'Hey guys, I'm Sarah. I'm here to be your friend, but I need you to be gentle, okay?' And they were. Cross pulled up the cub's behavioral records on his data pad, scrolling through pages of incident reports. "Commander, these juveniles have attacked every sentient being who entered their space. They mauled a Krogar security specialist through powered armor. They are rated as extreme threat level." Vexithara watched as Sarah continued to pet the cubs, her movements slow and confident. The creatures remained calm, some now lying down completely, their massive forms relaxed. It defied everything the commander knew about xenobiology, about predator behavior, about the natural order of the galaxy. "I am going in," Vexithara announced suddenly. "Commander, no!" Halvorn's voice rose in alarm. "If the cubs attack, we cannot lose both you and Dr. Chen." "Then they will not attack." Vexithara's decision was made. She needed to understand this impossible situation. But I will wear armor and carry a neural stunner. 5 minutes later, Vexithara stood at the habitat entrance, sealed in full protective gear. Through her helmet, she could hear her own breathing, quick and shallow despite her attempts to remain calm. The door hissed open, and she stepped into the environment where 6 of the galaxy's most dangerous juveniles waited. The cubs' heads swiveled toward her immediately, 6 pairs of eyes, each one reflecting the cold calculation of born hunters, fixed on the newcomer. Vexithara felt her survival instincts screaming at her to retreat. One of the cubs, the one Sarah had called Mac, rose to its feet and took a step toward her. The creature's shoulders were level with Vexithara's chest, its claws scraped against the floor with a sound like knives on stone. "It's okay, Mac," Sarah said gently. "That's Commander Vexithara. She's my friend. Can you be nice to her too?" The cub paused, its head tilting. It looked back at Sarah, then at Vexithara, as if considering the request. Then, impossibly, it sat down and made a low, chirping sound. "See?" Sarah gestured for Vexithara to approach. "He's saying hello. Just move slowly and don't make direct eye contact yet. They need to get used to your scent first." Vexithara's legs felt frozen. "Dr. Chen, these creatures do not understand language. They are operating on pure instinct." "Are they, though?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Or do we just assume that because they don't communicate the way we expect?" "I've been studying their vocalizations and body language. They're way smarter than the reports suggest." Vexithara forced herself to take a step forward, then another. The cubs watched but did not move. She could feel their collective attention, that predatory focus that evaluated every creature for either threat level or food potential. Her hand trembled slightly as she moved closer to Sarah's position. "Breathe," Sarah advised. "They can sense fear, but it's okay to be afraid. Just don't let it control you. You're here as a guest, not a threat or prey." "How can you be certain they perceive the difference?" Vexithara asked, now only a few meters away. "Because I treat them like thinking beings instead of just animals," Sarah replied. She reached out and placed her hand on Luna's head. The cub leaned into the touch. "Every species in this galaxy underestimates creatures that don't have technology or don't speak their languages. But intelligence comes in lots of forms." Vexithara finally reached Sarah's side and carefully lowered herself to sit, keeping her armored form as non-threatening as possible. The cubs watched with curiosity but not aggression. Brutus, the largest, stretched and yawned, displaying teeth that could shred through the commander's armor with minimal effort. "When I entered," Sarah continued, "I didn't see them as threats. I saw them as scared babies who had been taken from their mother, poked and prodded by strangers, kept in a cage. So I introduced myself the way I would to any frightened child, with kindness and respect." "But they are predators," Vexithara insisted, though her voice held less certainty than before. "So are humans," Sarah pointed out. "Our ancestors hunted for survival too. But we learned cooperation, communication, trust. Why can't they?" She gestured to Pepper, the smallest cub who had been watching from behind Luna. "Come here, sweetheart, it's okay." Pepper hesitated, then slowly crawled forward. The cub's movements were tentative, uncertain. When it reached Sarah, it pressed its head against her chest, and Sarah wrapped her arms around it. "This one was the most scared," Sarah explained. "Probably the runt of the litter. The others picked on her, so I gave her extra attention, made sure she felt safe. Now she trusts me." Vexithara watched the interaction, her scientific mind racing to explain what she was witnessing. "The galactic xenobiology community will never accept this. They will say it is an anomaly, a statistical impossibility." "Then they're not very good scientists," Sarah said flatly. "Good science means questioning assumptions. Everyone assumed these cubs were mindless killers because that's what predators are supposed to be. But nobody tried to understand them first." One of the other cubs, Cheese, approached Vexithara. The commander tensed, every muscle in her body preparing for attack. But the cub simply sniffed at her armor, then made a questioning grunt. "He wants to know why you smell like metal and fear," Sarah translated, somehow reading the cub's intent. "Try taking off your helmet, let him see your face." "Absolutely not. That is, Commander, you came in here to understand? You can't do that from behind barriers." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. "Trust works both ways." Vexithara's clawed hands moved to her helmet seals before her conscious mind could override the decision. The helmet hissed as pressure equalized, and she lifted it off. The habitat's air touched her scales, carrying the scent of the cubs, a musky smell mixed with something almost sweet. Cheese leaned closer, sniffing loudly. Then the cub did something that would haunt Vexithara's understanding of the universe forever. It gently touched its nose to hers, the universal gesture of trust among its species, and made a soft rumbling sound. "He likes you," Sarah grinned. "Congratulations, Commander. You just made your first Kralax friend." Over the next hour, Vexithara sat with Sarah and the cubs, watching, learning, and slowly beginning to understand. Sarah demonstrated how she had learned their vocalizations, how different sounds meant different things. A high chirp meant curiosity, a low rumble meant contentment, a sharp bark meant warning, but not threat, just a request for space. The cubs played, roughhousing with each other, but always aware of where the humans were, always careful not to include them in the rougher parts of their games. When Brutus accidentally knocked into Sarah too hard, he immediately stopped and nuzzled her, checking if she was okay. "You see," Sarah said, "they have empathy. They understand when they've been too rough. They care about not hurting me." "This changes everything," Vexithara admitted. "If these cubs can be socialized, if they can form bonds with other species, it means every species we've written off as too dangerous or too primitive might just be misunderstood," Sarah finished. "It means we need to approach first contact with compassion instead of caution." Dr. Halvorn's voice crackled through the communication system. "Commander, we have been observing. The behavioral data is unprecedented. We must document this methodology." Vexithara looked at Sarah. "How did you know this would work? What made you believe you could connect with them?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, stroking Luna's head. "Because someone believed in me once when I was difficult, when I was angry and scared and lashing out. They didn't treat me like a problem to be solved. They just asked me nicely to be better, and they showed me what better looked like." She smiled. "I figured everyone deserves that same chance, even scary alien cubs." The commander felt something shift in her understanding of the universe. For decades, galactic society had operated on hierarchies of power, on assumptions about intelligence and capability based on technology and communication. But this human, this strange species that had only recently joined the galactic community, was teaching an old lesson in a new way. "Commander Vexithara," Sarah said, "I'd like to propose a new research protocol. Instead of studying species as subjects, what if we tried to communicate with them as equals? What if we asked nicely first?" Vexithara looked around at the 6 cubs, now peacefully resting or playing, no longer the terrifying threats they had been labeled. She thought about all the other species quarantined or destroyed because they were deemed too dangerous, too aggressive, too alien to coexist with galactic civilization. "I will bring your proposal to the council," Vexithara said, "though I suspect they will be as skeptical as I was." "That's okay," Sarah replied. "We'll just have to show them. Actions speak louder than words." She paused, then added with a grin, "But asking nicely usually gets you pretty far, too." As Vexithara prepared to leave the habitat, Cheese followed her to the door. The cub made a sad sound, and Sarah laughed. "He wants to know if you'll come back to visit." The commander looked down at the massive predator cub that was somehow gazing up at her with what could only be described as hopeful eyes. She reached out, hesitated, then gently touched the top of its head. "Yes," she said, speaking directly to Cheese. "I will return, if you promise to continue being good." The cub chirped happily and bounded back to its siblings. Vexithera sealed her helmet and stepped through the door, her world view forever altered. Behind her, she could hear Sarah laughing as the cubs piled on top of her, all gentleness and trust. In the observation bay, the research team erupted into excited discussion, but Vexithara stood quietly, watching through the glass as the human and the cubs existed in harmony. She had witnessed something profound, something that would ripple through galactic society. Sometimes, the most revolutionary act was the simplest one. Sometimes, all anyone needed was someone to see them not as a threat or a problem, but as a being worthy of respect and kindness. Sometimes all it took was asking nicely, and perhaps, Vexithera thought, that was the most human thing of all.